most of you will have seen by now that there is serious talk, increasing in tempo, about Haymon coming over to the UK and starting to build his empire over here and try and take over like he's done in the States. I guess there's a few things to talk about here. One, will it happen? Two, if it did happen, what would be the effects of that? And three, is it actually a bad thing? I mean, let's start with the state of boxing in the UK as it is currently. I must admit that whilst there's been some good fights in the last 2 to 3 years, I myself am not overly happy with the boxing situation in the UK. And I think in showing the world the potential this country has as a boxing nation with Frost Groves, it's only going to do, it's only going to increase the interest of international guys like Haymon who want a piece of that pie. But where we are at in the UK currently, if I'm honest, is we've got Eddie Hearn and Sky absolutely dominating things. Really, really dominating things. And essentially running their business on what I can only describe as a pay-per-view model. They build fighters up, the end goal being pay-per-view. And Eddie Hearn himself refers to this in interviews he does. So, it's not a big secret or anything hugely surprising that I'm saying here. What this means is that we get a very, very inferior product on a standard Saturday night and end up having to pay pay-per-view for more and more and more debatable bills. We're going to have to pay pay-per-view for a card that's headlined by Anthony Joshua versus Dillian Whyte, a British title fight. We were almost asked to pay pay-per-view for Kell Brook defending against Diego Chavez, which I would not have parted with my money for, let me tell you that. So, it's an interesting situation. You've got Eddie Hearn dominating the show. I think it's fair to say that whilst Eddie Hearn's done a good job in progressing boxing, and some of the stuff that he's done has been very, very impressive and very, very good for the UK scene, we're at a stage now where I'm wondering, is what he's currently doing continuing to add value, or is it now just his turn to cash in? On the other side, we've got BoxNation, who are the number 2 guys out there, I guess you could say. BoxNation had some really, really big wins early on, getting Tyson Fury, getting Chris Eubank Jr., David Haye versus Derek Chisora, those sort of events. The difficulty is they've had a very, very tough year of it. And whilst they continue to provide good content at quality price, what they have not provided recently is the superstar fights. Fury Klitschko lost. Billy Joe Saunders versus Chris Eubank Jr. lost. Mayweather versus Pacquiao lost. And what you've got is a solid service for hardcore boxing fans that, to me, lacks the kind of star power. Billy Joe Saunders versus Andy Lee is a very, very good fight. Very good fight. I'm looking forward to it. But it's not typical of the kind of world title fights we get on BoxNation. Whilst I want to support BoxNation and I want to support British guys fighting for world titles, for me, honestly, Terry Flanagan, Liam Smith, these guys are what Tyson Fury would refer to as British world title holders. They're performing well. Fair play to them, credit to them. But they're not in the fights that are propelling them to the top of the division at my stage. In my eyes, sorry. So, yes, Haymon and his arrival to the UK is going to change things, undoubtedly. But, if anything, it's going to bring more competition into the fold. And is competition really a bad thing when you're dealing with BoxNation, who are doing a sort of appreciated job of providing what I can only describe as second-tier content, or Sky Sports, who are just running the business on a pay-per-view model? And don't get me wrong, I know people are big fans of BoxNation, and I am too, but we must recognise that whilst BoxNation appeals to you and I, sort of hardcore boxing fans, what it's not doing is appealing to the average man in the street, I don't think, with its content. And that's what I'm getting at here. Haymon's seen the potential of the UK. He's already signed, Amir Khan, Carl Frampton, James DeGale, and Lee Selby. So, he's seen the potential. He's seen Frost Groves at Wembley. But he's also probably seen a lack of huge fights being made of late. I mean, there's no announcement on Frampton Quigg. What about Brooke Khan? Groves the Gale. All of these fights aren't happening yet at this stage, and he's probably thinking now could be a good time to gain his involvement. So let's talk about what the effects of this will actually be. And the truth is, none of us actually know what the effects will definitely be at this stage, but let's speculate. Let's talk Eddie Hearn first. Eddie Hearn is a promoter. Al Haymon is a manager. So Al Haymon would take managerial roles on Eddie Hearn fighters. Now, hypothetically, that makes no difference. But I kind of get the sense that whilst Eddie Hearn maybe has never managed James DeGale, or whilst Eddie Hearn maybe didn't manage Lee Selby, for example, he kind of had control to an extent. He was their realistic only option. You know, it's like I didn't really see Lee Selby having a real alternative but to box on Eddie Hearn cards. And as a result, I think Eddie Hearn's been allowed to dictate the schedule for these kind of guys. You know, obviously he's got his number of shows that he's doing with Sky, and he's probably really been the main player in deciding when Selby fights and to an extent who he fights against. With Al Haymon there, that goes out the window. You know, we've already seen James DeGale go and, you know, he's going to go and fight internationally against Boutte. We've seen Selby go and fight internationally. We've seen Frampton go and fight internationally. Obviously, Amir Khan's been fighting internationally. You know, what I'm getting at is, I think Eddie Hearn, in terms of getting his required numbers of pay-per-views, getting his required numbers of Sky Saturday night cards, he's going to struggle. He is going to struggle. And that means that existing Sky people who subscribe to Sky, like myself, may have to suffer a lower content. Because, let's say Kell Brook becomes an Al Haymon managed fighter, right? Obviously Al Haymon's going to be able to bring multiple seven-figure opportunities to his attention. So, the question is how happy is he then going to be to fight on Eddie Hearn cards? I mean, we know he's been fighting on far less money than Keith Thurman, for example, even though Kell's the champion and Keith is not at this stage. So, for me, it's a real difficult question, that. And it's going to possibly mean Eddie Hearn struggles. Possibly means he's going to have to sign lesser fighters, so he has enough control and enough men that he can say to Sky, look, I've got these bills filled with A, B, C, D. I guess the broadcaster or broadcasters Al Haymon chooses to partner with is also very relevant. I mean, if we look at how Al Haymon operates in the States, his modus operandi, if you like, he doesn't seem to work purely with one promoter. He doesn't seem to work purely with one broadcaster. There's talk about him working with BT Sports here in the UK. I mean, I think if that were to happen, and I discussed this yesterday on Twitter, but if that were to happen, that's probably going to be the end of BoxNation, really. Just my opinion. Because if you think about it, people subscribe to Sky for other reasons, don't they? The football, the darts, the Formula 1, you know, whatever, the Game of Thrones. My point is that Sky is such a big business, they probably aren't going to, you know, boxing isn't their core market. But if boxing comes on BT Sports with the other coverage they have, you know, it's asking a lot for the boxing fan out there to pay out for Sky, to pay out for BT Sports, and then to pay out for BoxNation. And my fear is that if one of the three has to go, it will probably be BoxNation. Because, you know, BT Sports, Sky, that's entertainment for the whole family. BoxNation is possibly just entertainment for you, the hardcore boxing fan. So there's always that. I mean, could Al Haymon and Frank Warren work together? Possibly. Possibly. I mean, we know so far that Al Haymon's been working with Eddie Hearn. Has he been working with Frank Warren? Not so I've seen it. I mean, who are the Frank Warren fighters who could possibly fight on a UK PBC? I don't know if Al Haymon's going to look at Billy Joe Saunders and fancy that. You know, Billy Joe's too scandalous, some of the things he comes out with. Certainly the likes of, Liam Smith, I guess, those sort of guys, Terry Flanagan, it would give them a bigger stage than fighting on BoxNation, and it would get them more recognised. So maybe there is some potential there. I mean, as I say, it's too early, really, to suggest what happens at this stage. But I do think it's terrifying times for both of the two major boxing promoters around right now. If Eddie Hearn's business model is centred around building fighters on Saturday night, putting them on pay-per-view builds, will Al Haymon allow that to happen if he starts managing loads of the fighters? Frank Warren's business plan is centred around BoxNation. How viable is BoxNation competing against both Sky and the potential of BT Sports? It's a real difficult one. It's a real difficult one. You know, people are often resistant to change, and change can be a difficult thing to deal with sometimes. But you have to ask yourself, how happy are you with the actual state of UK boxing to begin with? We know there's so much potential there, but right now the sort of mega fights possibly are not getting made. I think it'll be fascinating to see who stays loyal to Eddie Hearn as well if Al Haymon does come over. I mean, you see Eddie Hearn joking around, being matey with Anthony Joshua, Kell Brook, all of those guys. It'll be interesting to see how quickly people leave him, or whether people show real loyalty and actually, stick with him. But it's very interesting to see how this comes about. It's been reported in a lot of the newspapers. There's a lot of chat about it online. Sounds that he's partnered up with someone who used to work with Haarn boxing, and he's trying to get a better Al Haymon. This is trying to get a better grasp of the UK market. So we could be seeing PBC fights in the UK sooner rather than later. One final thing: fighters and pay. Some of these fighters are not getting paid well compared to their American compatriots. I'm someone who's pro fighters getting paid. I think it's a dangerous sport. It's a short career. Any fight, anytime you step into the ring, it could be your last. And if fighters can get more money, if they can, benefit from this increased competition, that's not a bad thing in my eyes. Let me know your thoughts on this. How do you see it going down? What do you think will be the main changes in the market? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, do give me a thumbs up.